Hey, Chris,
Hey, Rod.
got a question for you.
Oh, yeah?
What do you do when how do you deal with the grief of the shattered dreams and hopes of your children?
Shattered dreams and hopes of your children. That sounds heavy, and I got no idea. But lucky enough, we've got someone today to help us.
Hey, this is Rod.
And this is Chris.
We are Unqualified
And Unsupervised.
the show where two guys try to figure out life after loss with no experts, no scripts, just experience.
We're going to have the unfiltered conversations about hard topics that no one wants to talk about, but everyone should. Coming from a couple of guys who were forced to join a club we didn't want to join. Hey, Rod. How's your week?
Hey, Chris. It was a very interesting week.
Again.
Yeah, kind of some developments.
You never have not interesting weeks. Do you notice that? I mean, good for you.
Well, there's some truth. There's truth to that. Yeah, I stay on the move. Absolutely.
Stay on the move.
And so do you.
I got a lot going on.
I saw you on the porch of the beer pub. I saw you. I drove by.
Well, yeah, I earned my beer. I got to go have a recovery one once in a while.
Is that what that recovery beer?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I've never heard of recovery beer.
When you do a lake lap quadruple tap, when I do 4 lake laps on my bike,
Oh, is that what it was?
I get a little tired, a little thirsty.
Yeah, I can see that. No, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I had a meeting in Des Moines, and I'm going to work with the community college down there and teach a class this fall.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah, so that's something to look forward to.
A class in what?
Cosmetology.
Cosmetology.
Yeah, it's a continuing ed class.
Oh, so you're going to teach them like how to look at stars? Oh, not the cosmos. We're not looking at the cosmos. All right.
The other cosmetology.
The other cosmetology.
Not cosmology. That's cosmetology.
Oh, yeah.
Jeez. Okay, that's got dad joke written all over.
Well,
it.
yeah.
But no, it was kind of interesting. But there was I had a moment yesterday, just walking through the house, and a song came on, and I just kind of lost it for a few minutes.
Yep.
You know, just that proves that Jeff is still here.
Sure.
You know, and those feelings are still there. You know, you work through it, but that's
Yeah, no, I get you. No, let's see. Yes, on Sunday we put the dock in, so it's officially summer. I don't care what the weather does.
Oh, sure.
But it's officially summer.
Right.
Even if I have to sit down there and freeze. But after we got done sitting, we had another recovery beer after putting the dock in. And
maybe I need recovery beers.
And then everybody needs recovery beers. Trust me. You don't have to have a lot. Just one or so is good. Just a quick recovery. But as I was sitting there looking at my phone, a Facebook memory post came up when we had just done that, and Janice was still here.
Oh.
We had just put the dock in like on the same day or the same date or whatever, and we were doing exactly the same thing.
That's amazing.
The group of us were doing,
out of the blue, random.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It just happened. Boom. There it is.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
How'd that make you feel?
Yeah. It slowed me down for a little bit.
Did it?
It
affects you.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. It bothered me a little bit. It brought back some memories and things, and it took me in one of those little down spirals,
right.
But it's okay to not be okay.
Well,
so it didn't go down very far.
But the synchronicity of it.
Yeah.
And you weren't planning that. There's no. I mean, you picked a random date. Hey, let's get the dock in.
This is the day we can all do it.
Yeah.
And we need to get it in. So let's just get it done.
Yeah.
Which is how we do it every year.
But that synchronicity happened.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah. Well, and the fact that the post, that memory popped up right at that moment. Sometimes it's earlier in the day. Sometimes it's later in the day.
Right.
Whatever, it's a random time. But that random time happened to be just as I sat down after being all done with it.
The timing was perfect.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. That's a good story.
So, yeah. So, anyway. So, what do we got going this week?
Oh, wow. What do we got going this week? Well, this week we are talking to my friend Christina.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going to be an interesting conversation. And it's it's something that I hadn't thought about before, but she has a son that is autistic.
Okay.
And they had another child. And unfortunately, the child is a subject of shaken baby syndrome.
Oh,
They found out that the daycare person,
the daycare provider had shaken
their son.
You're not supposed to shake the baby.
Well, here they are. Those boys are now coming into their teenage years. And in talking to Christine about that, she wants to give us some insight what's like to be the parent of children with these profound disabilities and how you get through it. And so I'm really looking forward to talking to her about that and what her insights are. How do you deal with it and how do you get through?
Right. Yeah, that cannot be easy.
No.
Okay, great.
I'm really looking forward to today's program.
Yeah, very interesting.
My friend Christina is going to be joining us, and she's going to talk about her sons who have disabilities, and she's going to walk us through what it's like to be a parent of 2 teenage boys that have disabilities.
Sure.
I'm looking forward to her insights and her guidance about how to deal with that.
Excellent.
So welcome, Christina. Are you there?
I am. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah,
you bet. Hi, Christina. Hope you're having a good day.
I am. Yes. Thank you.
All right. Let's start with start at the very beginning, because we'll just start at the beginning. Tell us your story. Tell us about the boys.
Sure. So I think it's important to kind of start back before they were born. So just, like everybody, from a young age, we start to develop these expectations about our life and what it's going to be. We all grow up thinking, our journey, what are we going to do and how our lives are going to look like when we grow up. And like our brain just creates these rules to help us organize the information that we take in. And we learned that, as I get older, I'm going to have this type of house, or if I have this car, that's what makes me successful. And that might not always be the truth, but that's how society is us, right? And so we start to develop these schemas about ourselves and what makes us who we think we need to be, or we're going to develop.
Right. We're going to get married, and we're going to have 5 kids, and we're going to live in a house with a picket fence.
Right. And it's almost all based on what other people think it should be for you.
Yes. And somehow we absorb those subtle ideas and they become our values of what we think our family and culture and society attribute to us. And we start to become connected to these schemas. And we start to think, okay, as long as I can attain this, this, and this, I'm going to be good. I'm going to have a good life. And we start to just create all this stuff in our minds of what this ideal life's going to be. And depending upon how that continues to grow up and the message, we absorb that, wholeheartedly. So I think, I went to college, got my 4-year degree, and graduated second in my class, and thought, well, sure, everybody's going to want to hire me. And, you send out hundreds of applications and you're not hearing anything back. And I think that was my first thing, like, well, what do you mean nobody wants me? So understanding how to live life without, after college didn't really make sense to me. Nobody taught me that piece. And so, that was kind of an interesting reality to my life.
Wow. A wake-up call.
Yeah, probably my first piece, right?
Sure.
So then it became, what does this, my life, I wanted it, I was going to get married, and I wanted kids. And so then it starts to becoming, we have this longing before we actually know what that looks like. And we want this beautiful marriage, and we want to have a baby, and we want to have kids. And so we start anticipating what that looks like. And so in my mind, I was going to have this beautiful child, this perfect baby. We were going to go to story time. We were going to have play dates. I was going to have these themed parties, this Pinterest mom, if you will.
Oh,
like
sure.
That was going to be my life, right?
Yeah.
At the time, we lived in Naples, Florida, and as beautiful as Naples can be, I call it like make-believe sometimes, because it's a lot of people from all over, everywhere, replanted into this beautiful tropical place. And so that really helped feed that schema of mine. And so
if you're living in the middle of that, you have to live up to that.
Absolutely. So I was definitely going to have this this perfect image. And I had a good job at the time. And then came the crash of you might not get pregnant.
Mm.
And I
Wow.
said, oh, wait a second. So here I am losing something that I've never even gotten yet. And so just experiencing
Huh.
that loss of something that I haven't even had. So that finite loss and grief, that it's a loss of plans and expectations that I have set myself up for. I went to college, I did
Right.
all the things, I got married, I did everything I was supposed to.
You're doing everything
Um,
right.
Well,
yes, and now
yeah.
I can't do that. So
Well, and
an
sometimes that's
opportunity.
really tough because what you set up in your mind and you want, your mind's a powerful and your desires are powerful, and all of a sudden you don't even get them, let alone the chance to lose them.
Absolutely. So then your
Wow.
mind keeps seeking and expecting things to come, right? So I've got a stable
Sure.
career. I'm supposed to get pregnant. That's what's in my mind, but also, what society tells you. And then also what I've been in my mind thinking for this long time from my scheme is that in order to have a happy, successful, and meaning life, that means that I have the child that goes along with that. So we have an opportunity to adopt a baby. We go forward with that, and we had him for 2.5 months. And there was one signature that was missing. And I got a phone call on a Thursday, and the lawyer said, "This is the part of my job I hate." And I said, "Just stop right there. I need you to just tell me what you need to tell me."
Yes.
And he said,
Wow.
"You have 2 hours to return him."
Two
And
Wait, what?
hours?
What? What?
2 hours, and that was probably the first time that I experienced true aching pain in my soul. I had not lost any of my, family members yet, and this was, I brought this child home, and I loved him from the minute he came in as if I had birthed him, and so that was a very deep ache. I had something and then it got taken.
Right.
Um,
I didn't
it
even know that was a thing.
And so we had a right to travel with him. We had medical choice, but she had one signature left to terminate rights, and she had attorneys. We had attorneys, and and the worst part is she was 17 years old. This was her second child, and they were going to be living in a homeless shelter.
Oh
And
no.
Oh.
so not only were we returning him, but we were returning him to a horrific situation. And, just like a Lifetime movie, it was pouring rain.
Oh
I
God.
was returning him in the dark, in the rain. Social workers were taking him, and they were crying because they knew me and they were sad that it happened. So
They
it
knew
was
what the
like just
future was going to be for this
absolutely.
child.
So, yeah, so it was
Well,
like this grief of a very tangible thing, and a human being, and watching my imagined future just dissolve right there in the middle of the parking
just
lot.
wash away in the
Um,
rain.
yeah, and it just fell short of all of my expectations that I thought, I had with this baby. And then about 4 months later, I was pregnant.
Oh wow.
And
Whoa.
yeah,
How'd
and I
that
was told
happen?
I have no idea.
Okay.
When you're
That's another
told,
show for another time,
Yeah, I was
yep,
conversation.
say if
yep,
Got
you
it.
don't know,
Okay.
Rod, I'm not gonna tell you.
Birds, bees, got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
yep, yep.
I'll just take it. I'll figure it out.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll
So here
send you
you
the Cliff
are.
Notes. So here I am, pregnant. Told the chances were, very slim to none. I had a lot of surgeries prior, a lot of things, a lot of complications. And then they said, but the chances of survival of this baby are very slim.
Mm,
So I didn't get to enjoy that pregnancy because it was very just consisting of making sure my levels went up, making sure that everything went as planned, and that stayed at my 6 months. There was concern about his heart. And so we were just always on edge. We just never knew. And so, you talk again about like your hopes, your wishes, your ideal dreams, and expectations for future. It was like we didn't want to get too excited in case something happened. And then, of course, I had to go on bed rest and preeclampsia, and they took him at 36 weeks, but he was beautiful. he was born, he was perfect, exactly what we had hoped for. And I I kind of feel like, we had to go through that adoption to appreciate what was coming next.
Oh, sure.
And so we have his name is Quentin, and he definitely was just amazing. And we did the little play, our story times. I took him to Barnes and Noble, So in my mind, things were going exactly how I had thought, and then just with the fear of the unknown and uncertainty that always comes with things, not always, but comes, um, I had to go back to work and I had to hire a sitter. So I looked at several different places and it was kind of hard because I was going part time and you had to pay if you went to a daycare, you had to pay for the whole week, or it was like all or nothing. And so I'm like, well,
Right.
that's kind of silly. Like that doesn't make sense. If I'm going to work part-time, I only want to have him in part-time.
Right.
So I had to go in-home daycare, and I found a woman. She was highly recommended. There was not even a speeding ticket on her record. And she was, like I said, highly recommended. She only had one other individual that she watched, a 11-month-old baby, and she was willing to watch Quentin on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I went, did everything that you're supposed to do. I went and met her in person, brought him back a second time to have a play date with the other little boy that she watched, just to ensure everything was good, and thought, okay, I think this will work. She watched him 6 times. On the Tuesday, I just felt something was off, and Grant said, "I can see why you would feel this way, but, I think you gotta go back one more time, and then we'll figure it out." And that morning, it was again on a Thursday, March 25th, 2010, and I didn't want to bring him. I felt very sick. I actually had a vision that morning that I had two visions. I had a vision I dropped him off and left him, and I picked him up, and he was dead in his baby swing. The other
Ugh.
one was that I brought him to work, and I lost my job. And so I called my mother on the way there, and I said, I just can't bring him. I said, something's wrong. I just don't know what it is. And she said, you're a first time mom. Every mom goes through this, and so I said, okay. And she said, you just have to trust he's going to be okay. And I went in and I had a talk with her. I said, is this working for you? Are you happy? Because if you're not, you can just tell me. And she's like,
Yes.
no, everything's fine. And she brought me into the nursery and it said, children are a gift from God. And and she said that, nope, this is fine for me. We're doing fine. And I put him down and he just started wailing. And, I thought, gosh, 5.5 months old, maybe separation anxiety is starting to come into play. I'm
Right.
not sure.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah,
But
I don't know. Again, first time mom.
right.
And so I still left and I just had this aching gut feeling, that intuition that people talk about, but I didn't listen to myself. I left there around 8 o'clock in the morning, and at 12:10, I received a call from her saying that he was throwing up and it was pretty bad, and she just wanted to let me know. And I said, I'll be there. Right, I'll leave right now. And so I called the pediatrician and said, I think something's wrong. I dropped off a healthy baby, and I don't believe babies throw up that bad. And she said it was coming out of his nose and everything.
Oh,
Wow.
And so when I arrived there, he was like a blue ashen color, and his eyes were glazed over. And she had him rolled in to her, and he wouldn't respond to my name. And I don't care how sick your child is,
They always
they
respond.
respond to you.
Yeah.
well, especially your face.
Yes.
Yes. And when I pulled him away, he had deep bruising on his head. And I just said, oh my God, what the hell happened to his head? And I will never forget this. She just tilted her head and said, um, a toy. And I just was like,
A
okay, we need to go.
toy?
And I didn't ask questions because I just knew, like, it was a very odd feeling, but I just knew that we needed to get out of there. Like, we weren't safe.
Right. Your intuition
And
is telling you this.
yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. And so I just started packing everything up, and the baby swing was right there, the baby swing that I had in my vision. And I said, we need to go right now. And she followed us out, and he did start throwing up exactly like what she said. And she put her hand on her chest and said, oh, I'm so sad he's so sick. And I just went straight to the pediatrician. I called and I said, "We're coming right now. Something's really wrong." And I'll just kind of fast forward to everything. He ended up with 4 brain bleeds and 2 broken ribs, and we were
Oh,
airlifted from Naples, Florida, to Miami or Hollywood to
Oh
Joe
my
DiMaggio Hospital,
gosh, that's
where
outrageous.
yeah, where he spent about 2.5 weeks in the PICU. And the first 48 hours, they didn't know if he would survive. And I think that that is something that no parent can ever prepare for.
no. No, you
And
can't.
while I am a intelligent woman, I everything that they were telling me I just couldn't understand. And I do believe at that time my body was in such shock that the words that they were telling me just didn't make sense to me. And I remember saying, "I don't understand what you're telling me." And they said, "There's a chance your baby won't survive this." And I remember crying and saying, "I cannot lose another child.
Did
I
they
can,
did
this
they
is
tell you
not."
what it like what
Mm.
had happened? Like had they figured out why
Not
he
at that
why he
time.
was
They
doing
didn't.
what he was doing? Because
So he was.
you left him, he was healthy, and
Mhm.
just a few
Mhm.
hours later, he's not
Well,
healthy.
clearly it was a traumatic injury.
Yeah,
Yeah.
To know exactly how, that's
but
an investigation.
no one looked at
Yep.
him and said something's happened to him. Like he's been traumatized.
What they said is when they brought him back, they said his brain is bleeding, and we need to airlift him to a higher trauma hospital that can care for his needs because we can't here. And they said it's been determined that somebody in that home has hurt your baby.
Wow.
And
Mm.
that's yep. And then I said, "I don't understand what you're saying." And then that's when they said his brain is bleeding and he might not survive this. And then the whole investigation, like crime lab, all of that came in and started taking pictures. Um, and she did admit to hitting him with his baby bottle. That was the bruising on his head. And then evidence showed that she shook him as
What
well.
I'm just gonna what person
Mhm.
hits a 5-month-old with a bottle in the
Mhm.
head?
Yeah,
Well, what person thinks that's better than what they actually did do?
right.
Right,
And
You
right.
she
know,
lied about it
like,
for quite some time, and then she finally confessed, and they said it was just a disgusting confession, like it was no big deal. So I tell people you can't interview what's in somebody's mind or what makes people snap, but you can trust your intuition. So while you shouldn't go around hurting people. If something doesn't feel right, don't worry about hurting someone's feelings. Go with what your gut tells you or your
absolutely.
Wow.
intuition tells you. Because
Wow.
if I could do anything different that day, that's what I would have done.
Right.
Right.
So when we didn't know what to expect, because obviously we've never been through this. So the first 48 hours were terrible because we really didn't know. His brain swelled. So everything that you read about with a traumatic brain injury and shaken baby was exactly what happened. 2 hours. She did say the event happened about 10 o'clock. She called me at noon because he was throwing up, and when something that significant happens, they usually throw up 2 hours afterwards.
Mhm.
So that fell right into place, and the other pieces were all, just really were lining up with the shaken baby syndrome. And so we were so ecstatic that he made it through the first 48 hours. His brain did swell, but his soft spot hadn't closed yet, so it allowed for the swelling,
Oh.
and they didn't have to drill in and put in a shunt. So we were happy about that. I mean, he was a very, very sick boy for a while, and then the one day he just kind of was out of it, and we were like, we get to go home, and they sat my husband and I down and said, I can't remember, like 87% of marriages that go through this end up in divorce. And I was like, why are you telling me
Yeah,
this
yeah,
right
no
now?
kidding. Gee,
Like,
like I need that on top of everything else.
Right.
exactly. It's like, I don't want to think about that. And so they said, we just need you to know this. And so we left there thinking, like, well, geez, he's alive. We're gonna be fine. And then we got home. The nice thing was that we were I would say across the alley because it's Alligator Alley, but we were 2 hours away. And so then once we got home, it was like I was paralyzed. Um, I couldn't move. I didn't grieve because I didn't know how to grieve, but the fear that was inside of me, because she was arrested that night. She posted bail on Friday, and she was sitting in the front pew of church on Sunday
Oh,
as if
wow.
nothing happened. So there was a restraining order against her against Quentin, but not against Grant and I. And so I was fearful. I didn't want to run into her. I didn't want to see her.
Right.
I had this very fragile baby that I had no idea what his future was, but I was just so happy that he was there. Um, and there was some part of me that knew our lives were going to be impacted by this, but I didn't know the extent of that. Obviously, I quit my job, and every day I said, "We have to move back to Iowa. I can't be here any longer." And
Right. Because you had support. You had support here.
yes.
Yeah.
So while I had family in Florida, I also had family here. And as weird as this sounds, I needed the simplicity
Oh,
of
no.
cornfields,
Right.
tractors,
Simple life here.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Very
simple
easy.
life.
Yep.
Yep.
No, everybody
Yep.
talks about that leaves.
Yes.
There's no traffic.
They always come back.
Yep. There's no traffic. There's no loud noise. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. I just needed to feel safe again. And I didn't. It was like every time we would go out to the grocery store, I was looking over my shoulder, like, is she here? Is she here to hurt us again? It was a very odd, violating feeling, even though it didn't happen to me personally. It was my child's,
Which is you personally.
is your person. Exactly. So it was a very weird, and I also didn't allow myself to grieve anything because I didn't feel that it was my place.
Mm-hmm.
I was a mother. I had to put all of my feelings aside to take care of my child.
Yeah.
Right.
Your focus.
So
Focus is the child.
right.
Yeah.
And so I didn't give myself permission to feel anything because that wasn't appropriate in my mind. And so we came back to Iowa literally 2 months to the date, and we were going to just start our life over. I decided I was going to just build a huge campaign against shaken baby syndrome and child abuse awareness. And so I did presentations all over Iowa and Minnesota, and I would talk kind of out of my body, if that makes sense. So, like in a third person, so I could share awareness. And people were like, "Oh my gosh, like, how do you do this without being sad?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's just my life, you know." And I just refused
Right.
to feel it because I wanted to make a difference. I wanted Quentin's name to be and what happened to him to be used for good. Um, and then Quentin's life we started noticing what was going on with him and the changes and the things that he should be doing but wasn't doing.
I was gonna say, what were the changes that you were noticing? Like he wasn't developing,
Right.
like he wasn't speaking, he wasn't
Mhm.
eye movement, that kind of thing, or what?
So he was delayed in like some of his motor skills, and he would just scream at night, just scream and scream and scream, and then he would start banging his head into the wall. As if his head was hurting so bad that he couldn't take it. He would sleep like maybe an hour or two. He
Which meant
started.
you slept an hour or two.
Right.
Exactly. I always joke and say I've never gotten out of the newborn stage. And he would just, he was very delayed in crawling and walking. Um, and then he did start talking. However, around the age of 2, he had over 100 words. And then all of a sudden he just froze, like he was really like a statue, just froze and he couldn't move. And we went by ambulance, and at the time they couldn't tell us anything. And I was like, tell me something. And he had stopped talking. He's never spoken a word since that day. And they ended up saying later on that he had a massive seizure stroke due to the brain injury, and that's what happened. But at the time,
Something that
they didn't know.
no one could have anticipated, it sounds like.
Right.
Like
Mhm.
there was no
And
way of knowing that.
Right.
No, and that's the thing. So I mean, we ended up getting in with a fantastic neurologist up at Mayo Clinic, which wasn't easy. I knew I had done, what do people do when you don't know what to do? You
Mm,
really start researching,
yep.
and that's what I did. I said, well, I guess my ideal life has changed. I tried to do his first birthday. I tried to do the Pinterest birthday. Um, it didn't go well.
Mm,
And that was the end of those. I said, okay, well, I guess that perfect picture in my mind has changed. So we're gonna do things a little bit differently. But so I started researching, and I was like, okay, so now um, I need to control what I can control. I need to control the information flow. And so I just had to start researching, what does this look like? What are the things that I should be looking for? How do I know what comes next? And where do I go for help? And I remember at one point I thought the pediatrician was just going to fire me and say, "That's it, get out of here." Like, because I was literally in her office almost daily, and she finally looked at me, put her glasses down, and just started crying and said, "I don't know how to help you. I've been a doctor for however many years, and this is the first time I have to say I don't know how to help you." And I said,
Wow.
"Then you need to find somebody that can."
Right. I was going to say,
And I
where did the
said,
answers come? Yeah. Where did the answers come
right.
from?
yeah. So then I said, I need a neurologist. And so she ended up sending us to a sleep doctor up in St. Paul. And when he looked at me, he said, "You don't need me. You need a neurologist." I said, "I know." And he goes, "Then why are you here?" I said, "Because you're going to give me that referral to the neurologist
Good
at
for
my
you.
clinic." And that's where we went. And so Quentin is now 16, and he has 18 different diagnoses. So I call him
Wow.
my Ferris wheel child. So if you look at the center of a Ferris wheel, that is the traumatic brain injury. And then each cart is a different diagnosis. And right now, my Ferris wheel is just running smoothly.
Oh,
No
good.
stops, everything is going. But every now and then we stop and a cart starts, twirling and doing things that it shouldn't be doing, and it needs a little maintenance. But it's taken a lot of work to get
Wow.
that Ferris wheel to run smoothly.
I think I was
Um,
over one time, and I think he wanted me to bunk in with him. I don't know if he wanted me to read him a
yes.
story, but he pulled me. Yeah. We went into
Yep.
his bedroom. And I think he
Yeah.
wanted me to like I don't know if I was supposed to lay with him while he fell asleep or what. But it was just kind of.
Yeah.
I kind of took that as a compliment that I wasn't a
Yes.
person of danger to him.
Yes. He is a very intuitive, empathic soul, and
Yes.
he knows when people are safe and good, and he provides healing to people. It's amazing how he can do that. I think my house is complete mayhem, and people find my house to be the healing house, which is kind of funny to me. But it's been very interesting. So yeah, so he is my Ferris wheel child. We've been through so much together. He has numerous different types of seizures. He's had paralysis in the leg before. He now can talk with a speech device and tell you pretty
Yes.
much anything that you want to know.
He's demonstrated that
Yeah.
to me. Yeah.
Hmm.
That's cool.
Yep.
Okay.
And so we've come far. And so when I was beginning all of this, Quentin was 11 months old. And again, I was told the chances of me getting pregnant again were less than 2%. And there I was, and found out I was pregnant. And Quentin was 11 and a half months old.
Wow.
So I said,
Hmm?
"Oh, what happened to that um, less than 2% chance?" So I did the natural thing and cried and cried and cried and cried, because how was I ever going to have a baby with a special needs child
Oh,
and
right.
now have a child that close?
Yes.
So I after I was out of my shock, I was like, "Oh, okay, well, we're gonna have." Now my schema had changed, that I got pregnant because I was going to have this perfect healthy baby that was going to be Quentin's protector, and he was going to be there to take care of his older brother. So that's where that was going to come into play. So I have also remind you, I'm well known at Mayo now, well known in Iowa City. So I've got providers everywhere. And Uriah is just a very easy baby. He's born. We did have a lot of trauma with his birth. That is another story for another day. But we very traumatic. He was born at 36 weeks. It was supposed to be a scheduled C-section. I coded. He needed CPR. There was just it was a lot. So that in itself was a little bit frightening. But after that, we were good. We brought him home. He was great, healthy.
I'll just mention quick for some listeners that might not the word coded. That means heart stopped, cardiac arrest.
Yes. So I went into complete shock, and I don't really recall a whole lot of that. I just remember being like, I don't feel good. Something's not right. And I remember hearing she's bleeding. And that's all I really remember.
Wow.
And then they told Grant, we are tying her tubes because the next pregnancy will kill her.
Right.
And
Grant is your husband. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And so that was that story. We brought him home. He was perfect. He was a very easy baby, very laid back, very quiet. He did have a lot of ear problems. So he had, 3 sets of ear tubes at a very young age. And so he was a little delayed. He never crawled. He scooted, it was a really not army crawl or anything like that. Just sat on his bum and would move his leg across and scooted across the floor.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen
So
kids
that was
do
a little
that.
interesting. And then he was very delayed in walking, I don't know, 15 months or so. And then he hadn't spoken a word yet. And Grant said to me, "Don't you think it's odd that he's not speaking?" And I said, in my probably protective state, I said, "Of course not. He doesn't want to hurt his brother's feelings by talking.
Right.
I mean, rude." And so, in hindsight, I'm like, okay, that's kind of silly. So I was like, well, I don't know. That's probably what it is. Meanwhile, we're going to Iowa City with Quentin to get more testing done. And he was diagnosed with autism. And they really said it was secondary autism to the brain injury, and kind of meaning that they weren't sure that he would have a natural state of autism had the injury not happened. But they couldn't really define whether it would be or not. And so they called it secondary autism based on that fact. And I said, okay. And they said, but, either way, we would treat it the same. So that's what we're going to do. And then they said, we want to run another test on him for ID. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't know what ID means. And they said, well, that's the new term for mental retardation.
Yes.
And I thought I was going to vomit. And I said, oh, I'm not interested in that. And she's like, well, I'm sorry. This is after they did the test. And she said, well, we did do the test, and he qualifies for an ID diagnosis. And I don't know who I thought I was, but I was apparently a barter, because I said, oh, well, we'll take the autism diagnosis, but you can keep the ID diagnosis because I'm not interested. And those were my exact words. If I could just, I got to choose. And she said, well, it doesn't work like that, Christina. And so he has intellectual disability. And so that is, what he's going to have on his chart. And perhaps, with all the therapies and stuff, he will improve, but that's going to be what it is. And I'm like, yeah, again, I'm not interested in that. So if you could just leave that off. And she was not interested.
We're not taking that home. We're just taking our son home, and everything will be fine. Yep.
That's exactly where I was like, we're not taking that. So
yep, you can keep
that's not happening. And so I always say to people, if you can just be dying and crying in the inside, but your affect is totally fine on the outside, that was me that day. And I was like, okay. And so I have this baby at home who's not talking. I have this child now that's just been diagnosed with this. Grant is not with me. My mom went with me. I called Grant to tell him, and he said, so you're telling me that my son is retarded? And I said, don't ever say that word again. That's not what I said. And I got very defensive. And, that was the new term for that, because we don't
Right.
say that. And then he's
Mm-hmm.
like, that's not what my son is. And I said, I know. And I didn't say that word either. And so the whole ride home, my mom won't stop talking. And I won't talk back to her because I just can't, bless her heart. I just could not.
No,
I just had to process what was being
Right.
said to me.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because
that's a
again,
lot.
that's another loss of what I was going to have with this child of mine. And so on the way home, I'm thinking, okay, who do I call? Where do I find my information? Where do
Yes.
I go? What
Mhm.
do I seek? Right. And so I was like, I need to find as much information as I can to best support my child. So again, why wasn't I crying? I was dying inside and crying inside, but in my outward appearance and in my head, I was planning for the next steps to plan for his future. So I get home to my husband and my younger son Uriah, and he's not talking. He's kind of doing odd things. And all of a sudden I look up and I'm on this kick that he's deaf. And that's why he's not talking, because um, Dr. Ears, I'm not going to say his name, clearly damaged his
Ah,
hearing when he did all of his ear tubes, right? I mean, that
Oh,
totally
right.
makes sense,
Right.
So
mhm.
I need a hearing test. So I call him up and I said, we need a hearing test. I'm convinced that he can't hear. So they appease me. We do a hearing test and we go back into his room and he says, Christina, he can hear just fine. We suspect, and I just said, I don't need you to say those words. I'm well aware of what you're suspecting. I will call
Mhm.
Iowa City. And ironically, as we're walking out of the office, Uriah looks up at the lights and starts jumping up and down and flapping his hands. And right there, I knew we had autism.
Wow.
And
Oh,
it was organic autism. It wasn't like Clinton's secondary. So I called Iowa City and I said, I don't need to go to this place and this place. I'm passing go, and you just need to get me in.
Yes.
And so, because they usually have like screening things that you have to do prior to go to Iowa
right.
City.
And jump
Right.
through all the hoops and
And
the paperwork, and
mhm,
yep.
And at this
yep,
point,
yeah,
Yeah.
I just knew. I didn't want to know. I didn't want to be right, but I knew I was right. And we went. And this time I said, I'll accept your ID if that's what it is, and I'll take your autism and we'll go home. And sure enough, it was both. And so I had to, really like just own that again and
Right. Right.
look at that and think, okay, um, how my life was going to look now changed times two.
Right. Because I was I
And
was I was thinking about that's my question. Like, how are you? I
Well,
mean, like, if
yeah.
you. I mean, yes, you're not taking it very well, but then at some point there had to be a switch about how you felt about everything and how you dealt
so
with it.
I'll be really honest with you. I so I got that one and I was like, people would say to me, oh, well, this one had to be easier. You've already gone through it
Oh
once.
God.
It
Yeah.
didn't, it
They didn't
shouldn't have
know.
hurt as bad.
They didn't
Oh,
say that. They said that.
Hmm. People
I've
said that to me.
I've heard people
I
say things
remember
like
that.
that.
Yep. I remember that very distinctively. And I said, I don't really recall what I said. I think I told one person, actually, this one hurt worse because Uriah was going to be the one that was protecting Quentin.
Right.
And so, no, thank you for your thoughts on that, but this hurt way worse.
Ow.
And because I was devastated. Again, I didn't cry. I've had parents say to me that like the depression or the grief kept them in bed for days and they just really longed for, what they thought they were going to have. I sprung into action. I went completely on a different, I think there's people that use substances, there's people that overeat, there's people that shop. I went to a different extreme because there was nothing in our community to help our kids.
Right.
So I was determined I was going to build the Children's Autism Center in our rural community to help provide supports and services for my boys and other boys or other children like mine. I never wanted a parent to feel as lonely and as
Mm.
isolated as I did.
Right. So you created a
And
support system.
uh-huh. And I went with it was Opportunity Village at the time. And I said, I
Mhm.
know I'm not the first mom who's had this and I won't be the last, but we need to do something. Our community is suffering. And in 2013, the Autism Center was started.
Yeah, I remember that.
And
Yeah.
mhm. And
I
I
know
think
that
I
was you.
channeled,
Wow.
yes, yes.
Right?
And
Awesome.
I channeled all of my grief, fears, energy, everything into that. And that became my mission. And I probably overworked myself. In fact, I know I did. Um, and that was my way of coping, whether it was right or wrong. Now, this many years later, I can I can feel that pain
I
that I
was going to
never
say,
allowed
like,
myself to feel.
when do you feel like start feeling your feelings?
I don't probably 3 or 4 years ago when
Right?
I finally allowed myself to say it's okay to feel, because I've never been one that's like wanted to look at the bad side of things or wanted to say,
Right.
"Oh, I'm sad." I've always
Right.
been one to like, "Okay, how can we look at the positive of this? How can we see the good in this? Like, what can we do to make the world a better place because this has happened to us?" Like adversity, right? And I never wanted to like my boys are amazing, but there are times that gosh darn it, it's really hard.
Oh, I
Oh,
bet.
I bet.
Um and so I don't ever want to look at like, the bad part of it, but and I've always tried to be like, okay, let's reconstruct our identity, let's look at ourselves, like this isn't what we thought it was going to be. I remember, the first time when we came back, here I am, college graduate, I had a 5-year plan in mind, second in my class, all of these things, and I had to go sit in the government's office asking for assistance. And I remember that day I just sobbed because of the judgments, the stigma attached to that, all of everything that goes with
Wow.
that. And I just sobbed. And I remember the lady saying to me, "It's okay." And I said, "No, this was not my 5-year plan. Like, I'm a college graduate. Like, I can
Right.
work, but I can't because I have 2 special needs children right now and I can't support us." And she was like, "These programs exist for times like this. Your life won't always be like this." And I just remember how devastated I was. And then the first time that I went to actually use like the food service, and I picked an older lady at the checkout and thought, oh, she'll be kinder to me, right?
Right.
And
She'll understand.
the judgment that came, and of course I had a nice designer purse at the time because I lived in Naples and I was making really good money, and that's when I got that purse. You don't know the story. And so I felt like I had to tell her everything that had happened and why I was on that. And she was like, "Okay, whatever."
Right.
And I was like,
Right. She probably didn't even
I
believe
was
you.
just, yeah. And I was just so taken back. And, today I am just so humbled by that experience and actually very grateful for that experience because I have had the opportunity to help others apply for state assistance
Right.
and been there with them when they're crying and saying, "Hey, I can honestly tell you, I've been here and
So
these programs do exist to help you someday be in a better place, and you will." It's
so
made me more human.
so what's the future?
Mhm.
Because we're gonna need to wind down here a little bit. But
Mhm.
but what's the future, Christina? What now?
That is one that, so this is going to sound really morbid, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, you can't talk like that." But the future is terrifying to me. I've always told people, well, we're just going to lay in bed and all hold each other and die like the Titanic.
Right.
That's my vision of how
Right.
that our life ends, right? But
Yeah.
obviously I'm not in a movie and this is real life, but that's how I've had to look at things for a long time because it is extremely scary.
Yes.
I can't go on Google and say, okay, how do I take care of my boys after this? It doesn't work like that. I can't create some program and make things better. So unfortunately, there's no answer to this overwhelming ache that I have
Right.
about who's going to take care of my kids when I'm gone. Um, and that's just a harsh reality,
Because that's a
that
real
honestly
concern. That's a real
makes me sick
concern.
at 100%. And it's one that I have avoided for a long time. And I've always like, oh, I've got time. I've got time. Well, they're 16 and 15 now. And both of them are bigger than me. Uriah had a time where he was so self-interest and so aggressive. He was hurting himself about 400 times a day and hurting me between 25 and 30
Ugh.
that I really thought, and he was 6 at the time. And I
Yes.
really thought I would be the one end up dead. Fortunately, I got him into a wonderful place out in Kennedy Krieger out in
I
Baltimore.
was going to say, I
Where,
remember, yeah, that time.
Wow.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm. Yep. And that, I mean, that was a whole nother uh, grief and just ache when you leave your 6-year-old behind steel doors and
A
you're
thousand
leaving
miles
him
away.
with
Yeah.
somebody else to tuck him in and take care of every need of his. Um, that's a whole nother, you know, uh,
Well, yeah.
conversation
And
as
especially after
well.
everything you'd been through.
Yes.
Yeah, and to
Wow.
trust, again, and, but I knew if he was ever gonna be at home, he was gonna have to go through that, and he's done so much better thanks to their
I was going to say
programming
that
that
worked. That program worked.
it did.
Yeah.
It was about an
Good.
86%, success rate, yeah, and so, I you try to prepare them as best as you can. I don't know in reality if Uriah is gonna be able to live with us until we're older. Um, I think Quentin is a different story. He's
Right.
pretty laid back and easy. I think Quentin could do, I have him signed up for voc rehab services and such. I think they could probably do that. But that is where when you ask me when do I start feeling, the older I get, the older they get, that's when I start feeling things.
Ah,
When I think there's different ages, when they were little and cute, you didn't always know the differences,
right.
um, between neurotypical kids and them, or you could excuse some of the behaviors. The temper tantrums were hard when they would get into meltdowns, but it was a little bit easier to you know, um, work with, I guess.
Exactly.
Um, and now, if Uriah is having a self interest time or an aggression, he's a big man
He
who's
is.
nice looking, and people think like if a police officer drives by, it it could look like an assault on a petite woman. And I worry that what if he
Mm.
gets arrested? What if somebody um, think something and they come and attack him, or there's shootings in big cities with the police because they don't understand because he's nonverbal and he doesn't
Right.
follow verbal
Right. Right.
command.
Right.
So there's a lot of things like that. And then God forbid when Grant and I are no longer here, fortunately, Grant has an older daughter and she's mine that I didn't birth. And she's wonderful. She loves her brothers. And, without me even asking her, she said, I will take care of the boys.
Oh,
Um,
that's fast. So there's a there's a
which
there's a good future there for them.
there is,
Yeah.
but with places closing and not offering, like they used to, like One Vision or, different good group homes that have, purpose and meaning in life. They want to do these host homes, which I struggle with.
Right. Right.
Because there's a lot of stories with that aren't good, and I want them to have a quality and meaningful life, and um, that's where I
Oh,
grieve the
yeah,
life that.
it's a real concern, absolutely.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah,
Christina, we have to unfortunately we have to end it there. This is great. Thank you for everything and sharing
yeah.
your story. I'm going to leave you with the last word. What would you tell other people going through this?
I would say that it's okay to feel your feelings, that you don't need to have permission to feel a certain way. You don't need to push them down because you think it's not appropriate. I think it's important to acknowledge the loss, even if they're not fully recognized by others. They are real and they're valid, even if that's not a death related loss. I think that was the part I struggled with the most. Like,
Right.
I should
Absolutely.
be grateful. My
Absolutely.
son's alive, and so I wouldn't let myself grieve because many children who go through shaken baby, they don't survive that. And so, how dare me not celebrate that my son's here instead. Um, but there were many pivotal moments where it very hard for me because he didn't get to participate in a certain way or be
Right.
a certain thing,
Right.
because of that. So, you can't compare loss. You just can't, because it's all different. It's all relative to what you walk through. And
Yep.
if that happens, do not like just shutting those emotions down by saying like it could be worse. I should just be grateful. Like just give yourself space for those
Right.
feelings
Right.
and honor your feelings. Like let them be there. You're allowed to have those feelings. I think the other thing is to, erase that picture that you have in your mind because that's just something that other people have probably painted um, in there. And social media is not always our friend. So,
boy, that's
no
true.
doubt.
That's true.
yeah.
Yeah.
And staying off of what we think everybody else's perfect life looks like. I've had to just, stay off of that because
Exactly.
that makes you think that you're missing out too.
Yes. Christina,
Yeah.
thank you so much. Thank you
Yeah,
for
this
helping
was
us
amazing.
helping us understand this. It's a great story. I don't think we're done, but what we would need to do is, in my typical form,
Yeah.
invite you back. We'll have another
Yeah.
conversation because there's other things that you want to talk to us about as well.
Yes, I think that would be
boys.
great. I
Yep.
would love to.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you back.
Yes. Thank you guys so much.
You bet. Thank you. Well, Rod, that was another incredible interview. That was an amazing story.
It really, really was. There was a lot of good information there.
There is. One of the things I really liked about her is how she did her own research and became her own best advocate. And
Yes.
it's something I've been talking about too. And we had to be when Janice was sick. Is you have to do your research and you have to go in with the questions and make them answer those questions for you.
Right.
I love the fact that she got to Minnesota and he's like, well, what are you coming to see me for? Well, because you're going to give me the referral that I need
Yeah,
to
I like
go
that.
where I should go.
That was good.
And so you have to do those things. But
well, the other thing that struck me is that, and what wasn't really brought out was I know these boys, and they do some pretty funny things.
Sure.
It isn't just doom and gloom. When they do go visit family in Florida, and so they navigate an airport. They're perfectly fine on an airplane. I imagine they do have meltdowns, but for the most part, they're kind of normal in regular ways. They like to watch their TV. They like their snacks.
Sure, they're kids. They're boys.
They're boys. They have an above ground swimming pool, and I've been there, and they've been in various modes of dress.
Yeah,
but they're
it's their pool.
It's their pool. They're home and they're comfortable.
Yeah.
Like I said, the one time Quentin was kind of pulling me into his room. It was bedtime, and I think he was inviting me to do a sleepover and maybe read him a bedtime